And good.
Hi, I'm Carl Middleman, and for about 15 years I've been teaching an end-of-year workshop at Pendle Hill. I just love it, and the title of this year's workshop is called For Love of Music, and I hope you'll join me if you can. One of the things I love about teaching at Pendle Hill is, for me, it's like a visit to the country. I mean, with the great wholesome food and all the trees and all the nice people here. Sometimes when I live in the city, I take my dogs to McDonald's, and I even have a McDonald's myself, but I get such great food here. It's like a visit to the country, and it's always rejuvenating for me. And I find our studies in music to be the same way. So in this course, it's not a music survey course or a technical course, but it's for people who might have some knowledge about music, but maybe you don't know anything about it. So we'll be hitting all different kinds of topics. So for example, with Tchaikovsky, we'll be looking at a Tchaikovsky symphony. He was born in St. Petersburg, and probably the greatest writer about St. Petersburg was Dostoevsky. And in his Crime and Punishment, he talks about all the nooks and crannies there. And he sometimes has these existential moments where he pulls back and says, what am I doing here? What am I doing in life? And I've found in Tchaikovsky the same kind of moments where he seems to step back and say, what am I doing here? What's the meaning of all this? And so I'll show a moment like that in the Fifth Symphony, and then it can affect the whole way we look at the rest of the symphony. And the same thing with Beethoven. This year we'll be looking at the string quartets, late string quartets of Beethoven. And so I try to make cross-cultural connections. And in this case, there's a poem of Emily Dickinson, I Could Not Stop for Death. And she says, I could not stop for death, but he kindly stopped for me. And tells us that she's going on a kind of an unwanted journey, as we all are. There was just the two of us in the carriage, and immortality. And so she takes the moment to look back on her life, and she sees children at recess in the schoolyard. And she sees a beautiful cornfield. And I find that Beethoven does the same thing in one of his late string quartets. So he'll give us a little trill towards the beginning that tells us this is time for a little fantasy, for a little time backwards. And I find moments in the string quartets that are just like kindergartners playing in the play yard. So if we can find those moments in these pieces, special moments, we can then relate to the music in a different way, regardless of our experience with it. Last year I did a workshop called, based on Orpheus and Eurydice. And one of the segments of our workshop was on Louis Armstrong. And for me, he's the American Orpheus in the way he conquered all kinds of barriers that were in his path. Orpheus had to deal with the Furies. Louis Armstrong had to do with all kinds of racial discrimination. And because that segment was pretty moving to a lot of people, I'm going to bring the focus to Duke Ellington this year. And he was especially sophisticated in negotiating his way in the world. So one of the places he played right at the beginning of his career was at the Cotton Club in Harlem, which was a really racist organization. You had to be white to go and sit in the audience, but if you were black, you might wait on the table. So it was sort of like slaves on a plantation. And he had to write jungle music for the occasion, but he found ways to make his jungle music very, very creative. He also had to write dance music that people would want to dance to. But he also found ways to indulge in his creativity with a piece like Mood Indigo, which the great conductor Andre Previn says is so extraordinary in the way it's balanced that he can't figure out how Duke Ellington gets the sounds that he gets. Duke Ellington also wrote religious themed music. He even did riffs on Tchaikovsky. So we're going to get into all of that in our segments. And one last segment I would mention to you is about women who are changing the world through music. And in that one, I'm going to focus on women who redefine the playing field of music. Women like Maren Alsop in the Baltimore Symphony, who has outreach programs to the neighborhoods that would be the envy of any symphony in the world. She's been featured on 60 Minutes, and she's really worth some attention. Very special person. And then coming back to Duke Ellington for a moment, we'll look at Maria Schneider, who's probably the most successful jazz artist today. She has her own orchestra that performs all over the world and sells all kinds of recordings, yet many of you may never have even heard of her. And in fact, she does a lot of what Duke Ellington does, because she's a great colorist and gets all kinds of new timbres and new sounds with her orchestra. So I'm really excited about a wide range of music, and I always love meeting a wide range of people at Pendle Hill. I look forward maybe to meeting you.